Yeah, it is difficult to run a football club, especially in the first division, more so than the Premier Division. The budgets that you had available to you in the Premier Division were topped up massively by the away supporters. This year, last year, and this coming year, you're working with a budget that you're depending on supporters coming from the UCDs of this world, the Athlons, and whoever else they decide to bring into the first division. And they really curtail you to what you can give Kevin going forward for the players, to the degree that you're probably down maybe 100, 120 grand on what you would have if you were in the Premier Division. And you have to work within that constraint all the time. And yeah, it puts massive pressure on you. It puts, but it also puts a discipline on you from the point of view of the player's point of view, that you know you can only go to a certain limit for wages with them. You can't no matter how good they are, how good you might think that somebody, it kind of makes you, it put a discipline there, so you won't go beyond that, and that discipline then is passed on to the manager, passed on to Kevin in this situation. You know. Well, the current situation with the club, it's kind of in a static plane at the moment. We can't really look beyond a season to season situation because of the ground situation. That really is where we're snookered, and until that's resolved, we're not really going to be making any massive strides within the club to be aiming towards where we were in the good old days. I'm sure everybody is aware at the moment we're in the middle of negotiations with the FEI and Bohemians in ground sharing. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but we're certainly going to investigate it and go as far as we can to see where it'll take us. To me, it's probably the only game in town. None of us, we'd all like our own home, but if we get what we're hoping for in Dalymount, which would be basically a shared stadium, really 50-50 down the line, where we'd have our own stand on the far side with our own dressing rooms, our own bar, our own facilities over there, and Bows have it on where they are at the moment on their side, and everything is split down the middle. A management company would run the stadium, we'd both be directors of that management company, and it would be run independently. No one team, no one club would have any veto into the what goes on in the stadium. You'd both have an input into everything that goes on there, and you'd have your own individuality with signage, and your own individuality with your own bar and things like that. But whether it happens or not, it certainly won't be for the want of trying. But we're static until we know where we are with Tolka. It's a little bit of a minefield, the way it's been left over the last number of years, and it's no. I'm not going to put a blame on anybody, but it's we were left with a legacy of debts which had to be looked after in some shape or form, and it put pressure on us all to try and do that. But we're progressing bit by bit. We're progressing, and as you can see, talk is falling down. It needs a lot of input. It needs a lot of money, and we don't have the money to put into the infrastructure in it. So that's why really the only way is to get either a new greenfield site that both ourselves and Bows are playing out of, or as John Delaney seems to want to do, is to bring Dalymount, the home of Irish football, back and do that up and make that a modern multi-purpose. When I say multi-purpose, a stadium similar to Tala, whereby you'd have, hopefully you'd only have football played out of it, but it may be a situation that other sports would have to be brought into it in order to finance to keep it going. So that's the current situation. On a week-to-week basis, you're really dependent on what we have coming through the gates in Tolka and our sponsorship. That keeps us going. But there's also other events that we have to do throughout the year: golf day, Christmas lunch, raffles, everything that we always seem to be pleading with people to support. But it's not that we want to do it; it's that we have to do it, and that keeps us going on a week-to-week basis. The supporters trust is something I know a little bit about. People, I'm sure there's people within the club, and I know there are, who slag me because I follow Leeds, but I'm also a member of the Leeds United Supporters Trust, and I can understand where our trust is coming from. Personally, I think our own club should be a complete members club. Whether that's run through the format of a trust or not, I'm not quite sure yet. We have to see. But I am totally open to the club being run by the supporters via maybe a membership club, similar to the way Bows have it. Maybe Bows' model is not the ideal one because there's so many that have so much of a say in the club, and that kind of stifles progression as well. But if it's run properly, the supporters should really be running the club. For loads of reasons. None least being the fact that the 9 of us who are on the board at the moment, none of us are getting any younger, and we want young blood coming into the place. We want young ideas. We want new ways of doing things. We've become maybe stale in some of our ideas, and that's not out of not loving the club or not wanting to do the best for the club. It's out of pure tiredness. You get to the stage where you're doing the same thing over and over, and you're tapping the same people for finance. You're trying to go to the same well all the time. So it's not that we're in any way trying to run away from it, but we do feel, and we are open, as people mightn't think we are open to people coming forward and giving us ideas and helping out. But the combination maybe of utilising the trust and a members club would be the idea, and I think there is a way forward for that, and I'd be fully supportive, and I have been supportive of the trust from day one, and I would have no issues with anybody who's helps the club in that way. Yeah, I can see the trust having a role in loads of ways in the club, and I know sometimes we come across as always wanting to be getting finance, to be looking for money for this, looking for money for that, and I think that frightens some people away from the club, and the trust being one of them. I know that the members of the trust don't have the financial ability that other companies may have, but they have other abilities. They have abilities which can maybe be able to help us in the infrastructural side, or in the social media side, or areas that maybe ourselves on the board wouldn't be experts in. And that's a role I do feel that the trust, or as I say, members club or something like that, a members club would actually be running it themselves, but the trust could certainly help coming in from that angle to maybe, I know we're back to the fundraising again, but the club has to have finance to keep going. In some way we have to find that, and whether it's cutting out a cost that we're already incurring by using somebody from the trust, then I'm all for that. Of course, I wouldn't be expecting it, because with the membership of the trust to get in, it wouldn't be feasible to try and ask them for any financial support of the club, whereas the SSDG is slightly different. They subscribe so much a month by each of the SSDG members, and that actually comes down into the club. Some people say that shouldn't be used for players, that should be used for infrastructure, but you have to have the money in to keep the thing. It's a vicious circle. If you don't pay the players, you don't get the somewhat success on the pitch. You won't have anybody coming through the turnstile, so there's no money coming through for the infrastructure. So it's a complete circle, and you're trying to balance it all the time. But certainly I see the trust as having a future in the club. I had no doubt about that there are some very good people in it, and there are people that I think can help out at loads of levels. Preference is a great word. I would love our own stadium, our own individuality completely. A beautiful modern stadium like Shamrock Rovers have, owned by ourselves, and that in fairness was Ollie's dream when he was at the height of it, and when he had sold the leasehold interest in Tolka Park. He sold it to a developer for X amount, and he drew down X amount on the basis of that sale going through, but of course the sale never went through. The property market went belly up and everything went south. But that was his dream, to have our own site. We looked at a number of sites, one in Donabate, one in Finglas, one out in near Raheny somewhere. There was a few different sites that he looked, and that would have been the ideal. But unfortunately, we're not at that in that world now at the moment. And ground sharing to me is our best option. And you'll be ground sharing with our nearest neighbour, which is, as we said, Bowes. Their stadium has fallen down as well. They have a number of infrastructural problems they have as well. The Connacht Street end is completely closed down. The other side where the Des Kelly stand, that's in a bad state. So they're under pressure from the bank as well. So fairness to the FEI, I know people would have issues with the FEI, but they have come on board here and they are doing their best to try and get a plan put together with Dublin City Council to buy Dalymount and to lease it back out to both clubs, where, as I said earlier, we'd both have 50 ownership of the stadium run by a management company. I know a lot of Shell supporters will say it's always be Bowes, and I do understand that. I can totally understand that. But if what is envisaged comes to fruition, then it won't be seen in the long term. It'll be a joint stadium used by both clubs. It'll be an FEI stadium used by both clubs, and it'll also be used for under 21 matches, for internationals and 19s. It's not what every Shelbourne, I think all true Shelbourne supporters would love to go back to Ringsend, to the stadium in Ringsend, and we did look at that a couple of years ago. We looked at it, but there was going to be a lot of objections from the local residents in the area to be building a stand around the back of it, so it didn't take off. But that would be the ideal, to be back there and to go back to the home of Shelbourne, where it all started. But I don't envisage really anything other than Dalymount being the prospect going forward. Yeah, of course, we'd all love more help, we'd all love more support, but really, it's up to ourselves. We can't be depending on the FEI to be wiping our backsides all the time. It is up to ourselves to try and get this better than it actually is. And the product is not a bad product. It's a very good product, but it's not being shown in its best light in recently, in loads of ways. You're right. The prize money that's on offer is not great for the teams down the lower ends of the table, and you're struggling even to come up with the affiliation fees that you have to pay from the very start. Fines are very heavy, and the pressure is being put on you to come up to a standard maybe that is difficult to attain in the Irish club's financial situation. There's been loads of talk about one division or two divisions, and I know the Premier Division clubs are meeting at the moment. They're having constant meetings with the idea of coming up with a new formula in some shape or form over the next year or two, when the participation licence is up for renewal, which I think is next season. But in relation to help, of course I'll have issues with the FEI in certain areas, but they've also helped us. They have helped us in areas, and some areas that people are not even aware of that they've helped us out. From a financial point of view, every club, I think practically every club in the league would owe them money for something or other, and there is a facility whereby that can be paid over a period of time, and the pressure is not mounted upon you to clear that in one go. So that's a help in itself. Yes, there are certain areas they could do better. There's no doubt about that. But it's not that they don't want to. It's not that they don't feel that they need to. It's just probably maybe it's better if the clubs do it themselves rather than like in the English situation whereby the Premier League broke away and is not directly under the auspices of the FA, where the other leagues are the Championship and League 1, 2 and 3, League 1 and 2. But and I think maybe that's the way forward. But you would need serious sponsorship. You would need to take maybe the rugby model, where you have maybe a possibility of a Celtic League, and to see where that brings it. Incorporating Northern Ireland, Wales, maybe in Scotland, maybe England as well. I don't know, but I think that's where the rugby kicked off a few years ago as a Celtic League, and that there's a kind of a nationalistic element to it, and that does draw people to it, and that would be something I'd be very interested in.